welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
I've been doing this podcast since September of 2012, and boy, are my lips tired.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Indeed, we are. And I just got off doing a special edition, another Crypto Skeptic episode that'll be published around the same time this is being published. And Corey and I were talking about it before we got going here. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's a tough time for anybody who's invested in that market. But for those of us who are kind of looking from the outside in saying, yeah, okay, this is what we were warning you about, it's just fun to watch. So I don't like to gloat over somebody else's pain. But on the other hand, there's the piece of me that says it had to work out the way it's working out. I mean, how else could it have worked out?
Yeah, it's those 4 words. I told you so. You know, they just
well, I try not to use those words because I don't want to rub it into somebody. You know, that's not my goal.
Especially the guy that decided to day trade on it, you know, like last year and made $1 bazillion in 24 hours and thought that was going to continue on. But that's a rarity.
Well, I was thinking about day trading, but I wanted to sell it short.
Okay. There you go. That might have been a good call.
Yeah, right? I kind of wish I had done that one, you know. But,
for sure,
yeah. Wow. But anyway, Corey Lane Hilton. So first of all, this is our 3rd visit, and it's really good to have you back. We had so much fun the first 2 visits that we just had to have you back for a 3rd one. I don't know if you saw the promo that I wrote up for this, but we were laughing so much with our last visit that we almost peed our pants. So we had to have you back.
Yeah, you know, and I don't, you know, there's no intent to make anyone pee their pants, but at the same time, it naturally flows sometimes, pardon the pun. It tends to work well. And I just actually, you know, it's funny, I wouldn't want to mention this right off the hop. Well, and I've done a lot of podcasts. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. I've been all over this podcast tour since I think January or so. And this one and actually Debbie's as well have both been like, I've met so many great people within your little community of this podcast. And it's really interesting because I had already met some people previous to being on LOA Today that you have on. Like as actual hosts. And so it was just very interesting to see Dan and see a few of the others that I knew before, but had no idea that you guys were connected. So, hey, the beauty of the podcast world, right? I mean, you know,
well, not just the podcast world, the internet world. I mean, it has the interconnectedness, all the little threads just keep growing and building and increasing in number. And we really do find out how interconnected we are on this planet day by day.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting to me because, like, you know, obviously, if anybody wants to know out there, I'm a former male exotic dancer and author. I basically am a writing coach now that helps other authors out to write authentically. And I have a publishing company now that helps out through that whole process. If somebody's writing a memoir in particular, I like to really work with them to really help them out to really just find the best part of themselves to put out the best possible product that they can based off their authenticity. So there's a real great gratification that comes with that territory, right? But at the same time, like, you know, it's interesting to me because this is what I've done, but I've been on podcasts where it's been based on grief, for example. There's a great podcaster out of Australia that does one called The Grief Code. And I met this man, Ian Hawkins, through there. And you know what? It was amazing because I never would have normally jumped into that type of a genre. But I'm so glad that I did, because then I actually was able to have him do a session with me just one-on-one for free. He didn't charge me anything for it, but we actually dove really deep into my own personal past to kind of release some stuff that I didn't even realize that I was still grieving over. Right? So it's really a cool thing. Sometimes it just kind of happens just because you put yourself out there, you know? And I think that's
I mean, we all have our topics. I mean, this is not only about law of attraction. We don't talk all that much about law of attraction. We bring it up occasionally, but the entire show is not about law of attraction. And I think this is kind of indicative of what happens with podcasts in general. Everybody has their little niche that they start with, but what ends up happening over time, especially if you do your podcast for a while, you kind of, you know, you work through the topic. It's like you've done it. Okay, so what do you do next? Well, you start stretching it out. You start kind of expanding out to the wider areas of life. And as you do that, you make new contacts with people. So that's how you ended up talking to a grief specialist on his or her podcast. And what you found was, regardless of whether or not they were into grief and you had this other background, you found ways to connect. Common ground. And that's what's happening. And I mean, podcasting is a big area where that's happening, but it's happening in all ways on the net. People are finding common ground with other people that they didn't know existed before. And they're not only finding the people that they didn't know existed before, they're forming friendships. They're forming
Totally.
connections that would not have existed.
And then you end up with a male stripper on your show.
Yeah, what more could you ask for?
You know, the one thing that I love about my former career is that I as serious as I did take it when I was doing it, now that I'm out of it and I've been out of it for a long time, I don't take it seriously at all. In fact, I'm constantly joking about it. But at the same time, I do really want people to understand how serious I am about where I'm at in my current position and really trying to make a difference so that people don't go through a lot of the struggles that I quite frankly went through, right? And that's typical of a lot of self-help people. They say, oh yeah, you know, write a book about what you were before and what problems that you had before and address those, and then that's how you can teach the world. Well, there's a truth behind that. But the thing that I found, really, I'm just rambling here, but the thing that I found is that a lot of people that say they should write a book, like, you know, I said that for years myself, oh, I should write a book. Well, a lot of those people, they actually are dealing with unworthiness because they're actually looking at themselves and they're saying, oh, well, my story has no value. Nobody's going to be interested in what I had to say or what my past is. Why would anybody care about that? And I actually said that about my former career.
I think we all have at one time or another. I mean, that's just part of growing up a human being.
Yeah, for sure, right? It's that self-doubt thing and the inner critic that's constantly in your head.
Right.
But exactly. I mean, that's never going to go away for me. I already know that. I've dealt with that. Me and him are cool now. So it's just sort of one of those things where the law of attraction does come into play, though, because that positive energy really, in my eyes anyways, and I'm spiritual and I do have my religion belief, I guess you could say, is more so geared towards energy. I don't put a label on it, but it's just my own personal perspective. But the one thing that I have learned through this whole process, the biggest thing that I've learned through this whole process, and especially in this last couple of years, has really been to really reach out and try to understand and relate to other people's perspectives because they didn't see life through the same eyes that I did, right? So you got to, and you know, I might completely disagree. I might be talking to somebody about maybe crypto and say, you know, he's like sitting there saying it's the best thing since sliced bread, and I'm sitting there thinking it's the worst thing ever. But I want to understand why he thinks that way.
Yes.
And so, but for people that drive me the craziest are those spin doctors that never get down to it. They just sit there, they keep spinning away from your question, and then you're in the news. They're typical of this. They always let them just spin away.
I've had a few of them as guests on the show too, as I think you know very well. And it's always a challenge when you're interviewing somebody like that, because as the interviewer, you are trying to pin them down. You're trying to get them, okay, address this topic. This is very important. And like you say, they kind of spin away from it because they don't want to address it.
No.
It's uncomfortable to address it. Why would they want to do something that's uncomfortable?
Well, yeah, especially if it's not really within regular society's morality and integrity, so to speak.
Well, that makes it even harder, yes. I mean, a former male exotic dancer would totally understand that point. But
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing because, like, everybody, I was even just on a coaching call this morning because I'm actually planning to do a TEDx event, and I'm actually working really hard to put together my I guess you could say speech, but it's not necessarily based off of my stripping career. Yes, that is my uniqueness, but at the same time, I'm kind of focusing more on the need for society, especially right now, more than ever with our disconnected side through connectivity, so to speak. Always looking at screens instead of actually talking to each other. Although we're looking at a screen, we're still talking to one another.
There are benefits to it. I mean, it's like any other tool. Sometimes there's a good side, sometimes there's a not so good side. Yeah,
but the thing that I've found that I've been able to really help a lot of my authors out with now is just basically that when it comes down to having that personal connection with somebody, each person, whether there be an author or yourself as a podcaster or whatever, you have your own unique set of core values. You have your own unique set of feelings that are associated with those. So that's what I love about this challenge is that every single client that I'm dealing with is a snowflake. And I'm kind of diving in there and getting in the weeds and saying, okay, you know, like, how did this impact your life when this happened? And how did you feel at that point? You know, and was that something that was compromising one of your core values? And then we kind of dive into that, and then they kind of connect those dots. They're like, holy shit, yeah, it did, you know? And that's where that self-discovery journey becomes far more than just writing a book. It turns into a life lesson. You know, and for myself, anyways, that's why I'm so bloody passionate about this, because I've had my own set of life lessons through my crazy book that I wrote. But now I'm actually seeing this crazy side of it where the people in my life that have maybe read the book or saw me living my authentic lifestyle now are seeing me as a role model, and they're doing the same thing. And that's where I'm like, oh my God, this gives me a reason to get out of bed every day now, right? I could do this for the rest of my life if I can make that kind of an impact, because that's, changing a person's life from inside out.
It's a funny thing because we humans, I mean, this is something that has been known for generations. Humans are very interested in conflict. That's what the basis of what storytelling is. Storytelling is all about the conflict.
That's right.
We're interested in contrasting situations. Good things happen, bad things happen. We're interested in all that kind of thing. But what it's kind of evolving into now in this 21st century technology age is a shift in a sense. It's not like we've lost interest in the old storytelling. We haven't. We still, I mean, if anything, it's accentuated.
Yes.
But in addition to that, we're now all realizing that we have our own stories in that same genre, if we can call that a genre, in that same realm of we've all experienced the downs, we've all experienced the ups, and now we're sharing those stories with each other. And in the process of sharing those stories with each other, a few things very important are happening. We describe it as being more connected with each other, and we're becoming more connected. But that connection is validating ourselves. It's validating our experiences. And my experience was a different experience from yours, but boy, there are certain commonalities to them. And we can both see those commonalities and like, oh, wow, now I feel validated in what I experienced, because I don't have to just get excited about celebrating the success. I can actually appreciate the failure side of it too, because my friend Corey had a failure side and we both experienced a failure side. All of a sudden it feels differently.
Bang on, nail on the head, Walt. I mean, I said this 1,000 times. I'm one of those crazy people, that the hippy dippy that sits there and does all my gratitude every morning, right? And I write out usually 5 to 10. I try to write out different and make it a different thing I'm grateful for every day to kind of just set my day. And a lot of the time, it's not the positive. In fact, I'll even say it, like it could be the pain in my lower back from doing landscaping yesterday and picking up something that was too heavy for me, and that alarm is going off in my lower back is telling me, hey man, you don't need to be doing that right now.
Pay attention.
Right. So I'm grateful that alarm is there.
Danger,
right? So
Will Robinson.
Yeah, right. Or maybe the struggle of going through divorce or whatever it is. And let's face it, people want to read the mess in the message when they're reading a book. They want to hear that pain. They want to hear that hurt. They want to, you ride off into the sunset with the girl at the end of the book. Well, that's all right, but that's not going to sell. They want to hear about the hard stuff, and it's sort of like, it's funny. I almost think back to that movie Basic Instinct many years ago when I think about writing, because obviously you're familiar with it, but the interesting part was the Sharon Stone character was of course the author, and then the Michael Douglas character was the cop, right? And he's all in love with her and all that. There's the conflict with all that. But the thing that I found interesting, the one line that stood out was that he was trying to say, oh well, we can just I don't want to say it well. We're going to ride off into the sunset and screw like rabbits is kind of like what he was going to say, right? And it was like, she's like, that's not going to work. Somebody has to die, right? And it's sort of that negative twist. People like the misery loves company thing. People want to read about it. That's why, to me, that's why kind of my mom, who, God love her, she's passed away now, but I'm just saying, back when I was a kid, she was famous for sitting there in the living room, reading her Star magazine and National Enquirer, and telling me all the things that are real about the aliens that are going to be coming. And I believe in aliens, but at the same time, it's just one of those things that's kind of funny. It's like she's seeing the little green men literally coming in the front door tomorrow. So it's one of those things that, there's so much disinformation out there now. And I've seen that expand now. Now the National Enquirer and the Star have turned into Facebook and Instagram. And,
that's a good way of describing it, actually.
Yeah. And also a couple of news organizations in particular, which I don't even want to go into, but I'm just saying, it's like that has actually given us this false side of society where it's kind of like, I just kind of see it like a lot of the things that a lot of people get away with now or I should say maybe not get away with now because a camera's right in their face. Back when I was being born, that camera wasn't in our face.
Right.
So I wonder, when you think back to Nixon or you think back to JFK or the scandals that happened in that era, was that just scratching the surface? Like if we had the technology that we have today, what would that story be like?
Oh
back
God,
in
yes.
the day,
Well,
right?
now you're swinging into my wheelhouse because my background was political history. I mean,
Okay, okay.
the answer to your question is a resounding yes. That is just
Yeah,
scratching the surface. That was truly business as usual. I mean, it came
yeah,
to the forefront and came to the public consciousness in a way that it had never done before.
that's
But that
right.
was that. I mean, look, if you really want to actually freak yourself out about this kind of thing, read up on the political powerhouses of the 19th century. Read about
Oh,
Tammany Hall in New York, for instance. I mean,
really?
it'll scare the daylights out of you. It'll make you sick to your
Wow.
stomach, but you'll say, "Oh my God, Watergate was a walk in the park compared to what some of these guys were doing." Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why you're kind of seeing. Like I said, I'm not going to talk from political ideology here because I don't want to piss off one side or the other because we are so tribal now.
Oh
But at the
yeah.
same time, it's kind of like you're kind of seeing that kind of stuff kind of bubbling up right as we're speaking right now in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, right? Like you can only pull that bullshit lever so long, and then eventually something's going to come and bite you. And I just have a funny feeling that zit's coming to a head here pretty soon. So,
Interesting way of describing it. Yes. I had a guest on just yesterday, I think it was, who made a really interesting point where it was a different conversation entirely. But he was involved in creating a lot of the reality TV shows.
okay.
His career, he was a talent exec with MTV, and he
Oh,
was involved with like a lot of the Real Housewives type things. He was involved with the Ozzy Osbourne show that I can't remember
oh,
what they called
cool.
that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and he made a very interesting point. He said that Ozzy Osbourne was originally supposed to be a food show. It was supposed to
Oh,
be making food because Ozzy likes to cook food,
yeah.
and they got away from that and did it the way they ended up doing it. But one of the reasons they were going to do that is because in their massive research that they do, they found a data point that said that when there's a refrigerator shown on camera, the viewers want to know what's inside the refrigerator.
Wow, that's
Isn't that
interesting.
interesting?
That is
So I
interesting.
bring this up as a way of kind of giving exposition to the idea that we're moving beyond conflict. Conflict
Mhm.
isn't going away.
Nah.
Negative isn't going away. Positive isn't going. That's all going to remain. But we're kind of taking it to the next step because now we want to know what was made for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, and ironically, back to Star Magazine and freaking Facebook, I remember the funniest thing, and I still chuckle about this to this day, actually, because I've done a lot of Facebook posts over the years, but I still look back, and it's ironic that you said that about the refrigerator, because the funny thing is the one Facebook post that I had that got the most comments. Oh, this is on my personal page, but it was just like the one that got the most comments, bar none, in my entire decade of being on Facebook was, "Who can guess what I had for breakfast today?"
Yeah, sure, exactly.
I shit you not. There was I can't
I
even tell
believe
you
it.
how many. And the irony is that it took like 150 or 160 comments, and finally my ex-wife was the one that pinpointed it, and she was the one that nailed it on the head because he's like, "Corey, you've eaten the same breakfast for 10 years now." Okay, cool. So it's just funny, right? You look back at that, it's like, wow. But no, it's an interesting dynamic because I'm kind of like, we're at that age, right, where when you're born before the internet, and you kind of wonder to yourself sometimes, was it better then or was it better now? Because there's an aspect of it that in my eyes is kind of like, it is kind of better now because yes, the corruption and all the stuff kind of bubbles up to the top because it's right in your face all the time, and there's certain things but that same tool is being used for so much disinformation on the other side that it's almost like it's that double-edged sword, right? It's like, I don't know. To me,
Well,
I think,
one of the people listening in the live stream, Jeffrey, who's one of our longtime listeners, he raised a question in this regard. He says, "Have we experienced conflict fatigue?"
yeah, I'd say so, Jeffrey. Yeah, I'm definitely over it, to be
Mhm.
honest. That's why I'm working so hard to make it so that my little bubble in this world is kind of not being so tribal, so I can kind of say to those people that I love, like there's some people that I think are so cool. I mean, I lived in the States for over a decade, and I love so much about America, even though I live in Canada. Like but I've honestly had times where I've looked at myself and thought to myself, my God, I'm more patriotic than half of the bloody Americans down there. And they're the ones that are sitting there claiming patriotic all the time and waving the flag, saying they're the best country in the world. And they are in a lot of ways the best country in the world. But I don't know. I'll be honest with you, Walt. I've been living back here in Canada for a long time now, and I hate to tell you, but we're a lot more free up here.
I love it. That's
We're a
great.
little more free up here.
I love
Between
it.
us. I don't want
That
anybody
is
else to find
funny.
out. You
Well,
know?
we won't. Well, we'll whisper it so that the word doesn't get out. Yeah.
Yeah, but Canada's not far from freaking perfect. Let's just put it that way. I got a lot of gripes I can say about Canada too, but you know, that's the thing, man. Is that I kind of look at it like when I think back, like and think back through all the generations of politics that I've seen through God my entire life, whether it be here in Canada or the States or wherever. Generally, I've never met or even heard of a perfect politician that actually does everything the right way. Everybody's got some gripe about something with some politician out there, and so we're so at that point where this person farts in the wrong direction, and it's like banish culture, you know, cancel that person completely because they did that, and it's like whoa, like it's okay to be wrong, you know, like you can accept being wrong, and you know, and I think to tell you the truth, it takes more of a man to actually accept that they're wrong and say, hey, you know what, I made a mistake, whatever. But you just never see that because it's a sign of weakness. And to me, it's like, no, not at all. Like,
There's a phrase though. There's a phrase that's been around for many years, generations, and the phrase is growing a thick skin. It's usually used associated with sales. It's often used with a lot of different kinds of fields of business and employment. But it also applies outside of the business world. Very often, it's involved with dealing with your own family members, or it could be a very close friend you've been friends with for years, and the friend is kind of moving in the wrong direction compared to you, and he's giving you a lot of grief that he wouldn't normally have given you, and got to grow a thick skin. Well, that what we're really saying with growing a thick skin is getting to the point where we're not letting what other people think about us get through and affect us negatively. I mean, not that we're ignoring it. It's there. We're aware of it. We're taking note of it. We're just not worried about it. We're just saying, I'm not going to get excited about that thing. And that's a mental process that you learn. It's not something that you're necessarily born with. It's something that you acquire over time. But it's a very beneficial process. I think that's exactly what's going on online in particular, but also with the broader community. I think people are learning to grow thicker skins. And the thing is, when you're growing a thicker skin during that process, stuff hurts because the skin isn't thick yet, but it's getting there.
I'm that guy that stands on the outside and goes onto Facebook and doesn't make any comments, and I just scroll down through the comments just to look at what everybody's saying, and I just shake my head sometimes. My skin's thick, but I don't even want to dive in that pool because like I got better things to do with my day than argue with some kid that's 12 years old pretending to be 25 right now. So like, you know, you don't know, like, again, it's just, to me, that whole thing is just so impersonal, and I may be old school, and maybe I like a phone call instead of a text. You know, maybe that's just because, you know, texts are impersonal and can be so taken out of context so easily. And, you know, I've had it happen myself, right? Even sometimes if I shoot a text at somebody now, I'll actually, believe it or not, if it's something really important, I'll shoot it to myself first to see what it feels like to actually take the text. Because sometimes you just never know what's going through that other person's head. You might shoot off something to somebody and they're, you know, thinking the wrong thing. So yeah,
actually, I think we're all kind of learning a skill here. I know I am. I'll speak for myself in this, but I suspect other people are learning the same skill, and that is to look at a text or an email, which is out of context because you don't get the body language, you're not seeing them, you're not hearing them, you're not experiencing all that stuff. You just got one little piece of information there that you're working off of, and yet we're getting to the point now where we can look at it and say, okay, there are a lot of different mindsets this person could have. What are some of them? If I can identify what they are, I can kind of accept where they're coming from. I don't have to agree with it. In many cases, I definitely don't agree with it, but I can accept it. Like, well, you know, they're having a bad day. Their mom treated them badly. Their spouse treated them badly. They treated the spouse badly. They kicked the dog. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities, and we can kind of infer from many messages that we receive what's going on, and we might even be wrong. But the point is, just by going through that exercise, that's the process of growing a thick skin. Because when we change the way we think about something, I think what happens is when you get like a cancel culture kind of a response, that's a person who is looking at things from one viewpoint only. The moment you start adding viewpoints in is the moment the cancel culture goes away. because the person who's engaged in it no longer needs it.
You know, man, I always kind of come back to comedy with this, right? Because, like, you know, we're seeing a lot of the comedians right now that are getting, you know, the cancel culture hitting them pretty hard. I mean, you know, everybody from Dave Chappelle on down, right?
Yep.
And it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm raised in the Archie Bunker generation and the George Jefferson generation, right? And I mean, like, I think to myself, I mean, God, if some of those people that are looking to cancel Dave Chappelle for talking about what he was talking about, and I get it, I understand the reasoning behind it, I do, I respect it and everything else. I'm not here to dog that, but at the same time, I think if they watch an episode of All in the Family, their head would probably explode, because it's like, you know, that's real. And that was really the way that the mentality really truly was at that time. Now, is that better or worse? To me, sometimes I kind of go, you know, like, it's as much as Archie was what he was, they also showed the good side of Archie too, right? Like the heart of Archie. And so you actually kind of loved the character, because as much as you disagreed with him, you know, he was that guy, right?
That's
and so,
right. Yeah.
And we just don't have that flexibility now. A lot of the time, I don't feel it's just kind of like, I mean, I feel for some.
Well, I think people are. That's what my point is. I think people are adopting flexibility. I think they're learning it. They're in the process of learning it. They haven't learned it yet as a mass, but they're getting there. They're like in the journey, so to speak, of how do you become more flexible? How do you respond differently? How do you explore things and understand things differently? And I think that has great long-term potential, just because that's a growth path.
But you're also talking to a guy that was like literally in a career of nonstop political ears and mayhem. So I mean, you know, like, it's from my perspective, I'm like, yeah, anything that's it's considered politically incorrect now is really off the charts, you know, the way I see it, because it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I get the reasoning behind a lot of it. We don't need bullying. We don't need a lot of the, you know, the bad negative side effects. There's no, you said the one word you said is the best, is awareness. I mean, really, it's like, but also to be able to be aware of what a joke is, you know. And I just kind of feel like people have lost their freaking sense of humor to a certain degree. I mean, God, I mean, there was a comedian by the name of Carlos Mencia years ago, and I used to see him on Comedy Central and stuff. Really funny comedian. And some of the things that he would say, like, you know, if you can take a joke, you know, sort of thing, like fill in the blank.
That's right.
You know, it was one of those things that the whole audience howled and everybody thought it was all funny, but at the same time, now that same statement would be considered just, you know, you're running down this segment of society basically, and it's kind of like, no, it's a joke. Like, you should be able to take a joke to a certain degree. And again, I'm a kid. I was a guy that was bullied in school, so you know, to hurtful things is a little bit different. But I don't know. To me, I just miss that side, because I'm a guy that loves going and seeing stand-up comedy, and I think it's a dying breed right now. It kind of sucks.
It's like anything else. This goes through cycles. I mean, Jeffrey, by the way, threw in another little commentary. He says, "Would you rather be right or happy?" Which kind of summarizes what you're talking about there.
On, bro. Isn't that true? You know.
But let me go back to the point that I was driving before, because I want to take it a little bit further. Yeah, no, it's fine. No, it's okay. That's what we do here. That we just kind of wander and explore and kind of get that's part of the process. That's actually part of the process I'm talking about. The more that we explore, the more that we consider other viewpoints, the more that we appreciate perspectives. That's really the biggest part, I think. Appreciation of perspectives. And that comes, I used to wonder about that. Where does appreciation of perspective come from? It comes from just doing it. Just finding a new perspective, and I never thought about it that way. And then finding another perspective, I never thought about it that way. That's appreciation.
As crazy as this sounds, Walt, my aunt was the one that said it to me that woke my ass up, made me just go, oh, really? It was funny because I'd just come back from Florida and I just had this mindset. It was kind of tunnel vision at the time to a certain degree. I'd gone through a lot through like going, I was down there for 9/11, and I had my own little story behind that, and was part of the relief effort with Hurricane Katrina and just all these things that happened while I was down there in that decade. And I came back with this very tunnel vision, and she turned around and she said to me, yeah, but Corey, you got to realize not everybody thinks like you. Like, oh yeah, that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Thought process, but we get in our own head to that degree that you think that everybody thinks like you, right? And it's not the case. So
that's where a lot of, I mean, like I said, my background's political history, politics, all that kind of stuff. That's where my degree is in. And one of the things you learn there is the mindset of totalitarianism, and, communism, dictatorships, all that kind of thing. And they all basically amount to one thing: everybody has to think the same thing. That's basically what they come down. I mean, yes, they all have their agendas. They all have priorities that they're trying to push. But when you
Control.
boil it down to the lowest level, they all want everybody to think the same thing. And what they
Yeah.
don't seem to realize, I think people eventually learn this. If they just stick it out long enough with whatever their cultish type thing is, and assuming they actually survive it, that's a long assumption, I grant you. But if you can work your way through the whole thing, they actually get to the point where they realize, if everybody thought the same thing, this would be a really boring world.
Oh yeah.
And when you recognize that, all of a sudden the whole cult thing starts to fall apart. The whole one thought for everybody starts to fall apart, and you start to appreciate the diversity of thought. You start to appreciate the value of, I don't have to like what it is that you're saying, but I can get something from it.
It's funny, Walt, you say cult following, and I was on another podcast with a very interesting podcast host. I'm not going to say her name, but she's a very, very, I guess you could say, famous adult industry actress.
Okay. All right. That gives us a clue.
Yeah, she said the funniest thing, and I just chuckled. She said, well, pardon my French, what? She goes, I'm still single at 49 years old. And she's like, even Charles Manson was able to get married.
Okay. Interesting perspective.
Right? I thought, wow, that's pretty hardcore. But at the same time, like, somebody that's actually, that off the charts, like, and you think to yourself, I'm kind of normal over here, and I still haven't been able to find happiness in a relationship. But even Charles Manson, who was that tunnel vision about his cult following and everything, even he was able to pull it off. So what's wrong with me? It's just funny. I just chuckle about it because you get to this age. I mean, I'm 52 now, and I've gone through one marriage, and that probably will be my last one. You just never know. But it's just kind of like I for once, actually, this is the weirdest thing is now that I'm single, I only have 2 or 3 family members that I even communicate with anymore. So my life's been kind of isolated in this last couple of years in a lot of ways. But the funny thing is through that process of detaching from everything and actually not really caring so much about what other people think anymore. And I'm kind of like going, whatever it takes to just do my dream. If I've got to go work at 7-Eleven to make the money to be able to make this happen, I'll do that. I don't really care what anybody thinks anymore. Whereas I used to always be so worried about what everybody else thought. And I think that we really get that way a lot, especially again with our airbrushed world in social media. Oh, my hair is messed up. I can't, put a picture on social media because I'm not perfect. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I just come back to that a little bit where it's just that whole mentality of basically just wanting to please others and not taking the time to really work on you. And that really comes back to, I really believe, especially in this time where we're coming out of a pandemic, or we're still in a pandemic, sort of coming out, whatever the hell we're doing. And at the same time, it's kind of like, I feel like that there's been a bit of a gift with that whole situation too, where it's given people a lot of time to take that step back and go, hey, maybe I really do need to start working on some things about me that have been holding me back from my true potential, or maybe blocks that I've had or whatever it is. And the people that have utilized that time are going to come out the other end of this, I believe, having a far better quality of life, because I think that for myself, I feel like I have a better quality of life now because I'm good with my authentic self. And when you're an open book and you got really nothing to hide, and I mean, I pulled every freaking skeleton out of my closet when I wrote my book. I mean, they all just came flying out of there, so now that they're all out, I don't know. I just don't, it's like a weight just went right off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, weight that you kind of knew it was there, but you really didn't know what it was. And then it came off. You said, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. I wish I'd done that before. I didn't know what it was, but I'm glad it's gone now.
Yeah, my coach at the time, Diana, she said to me, I remember she was saying to me, because I was having this real harsh block actually, and it was really weird because I always said to her, I said, I can't tell you how many times in my lifetime that I've felt like I'm climbing a mountain, and I get to the 3/4 mark, and then some boot comes and kicks my ass back down again, and I'm like, I'm gonna walk back up the bloody mountain again. I can't remember how many times this has happened to me. And I said to her, I feel like there's a weird subconscious block in here somewhere. And it's like, I've kept blaming it on family members from my past and always passing this off on something else. And I'm really just trying to figure it out. And she said, she goes, well, what was it that was it somebody that was close to you in your life that might've said something to you that affected you? And I said, yeah, I was like, it was pretty young when my grandmother who raised me turned around and said, you're a follower, you're never going to be a leader. I think I mentioned this on one of your other podcasts as well. But it was very interesting that particular, just that statement. And what she did was she flipped the whole thing right over on me and turned around and said, well, hey, your homework tonight is to actually make, first off, define what a leader is. And I told her what my definition was. And then when she turned around and said, well, now give me a time when your grandparents who raised you were leaders in your life. And when she actually did that and actually showed me that my grandmother, who, God, she was an amazing mother. She did everything in all the mom role, but she really wasn't a leader. And so when she defined that to me and threw that back in my face, it was amazing because I realized it wasn't about me. Right. And when I realized that was where the block went, gone.
Yeah,
and
that's very cool.
Weird, so it's connecting those dots. And so that's why I love so much doing this for other people now as well, because those are those dots that you don't even know are there. Right. Yeah. And so it's cool to see that process happen. So at the end of the day, when somebody writes with me, they're not just getting a great book, but they're actually getting something that changes their whole perspective as far as the way they look at their failures, or maybe their mistakes in their past, or maybe even their things that they've done really well with. It gives you a different perspective, right? And so by connecting those dots, that's where I became that role model. That it's just changed everything, right? And I never dreamed I would be doing this.
What you're actually describing, from my perspective anyway, is the growth process. I mean, that's really what your story just illustrated beautifully. And it did it in a real feel environment, because everybody can identify with, a grandmother or a parent figure or somebody who played a major influence in their lives, and they found out later on that part of that influence really wasn't appropriate for them, or they had to switch it around or flip it or something like that. Everybody can kind of identify with that on one level or another. I see that growth pattern happening so often now. Probably part of that is because I do a podcast where I interview all these people who have been on these life journeys and have experienced all these crazy things happening. And they were close to, suicide, or, they lost everything or whatever. And then they turned it around. They had a big, so you interview enough people like that. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of growth going on. But I'm also seeing it in the wider society. I'm seeing it. You mentioned the Facebook groups, right? You can look at the Facebook groups. You can look at the commentary, and you kind of shake your head. I do the same thing. I shake my head looking at some of the stuff that people write.
I'm just here for the comment.
But even in the head shaking, I can also look at some of those same commentary and realize I can see where that person did some growth there. I can see where this person did some growth there. This person's doing some growth right now. This person's approaching the growth. They haven't got there yet, but you can see they're like 2 steps away from it. I'm seeing it all over the place now. So again, I think perspective really is a big piece of it. What are you looking at? If I'm going to be looking at all the different ways that people are disconnected or polarized from each other, whatever, I'll find those. But I think you can also find the other side. There's a lot of growing going on right now, huge amounts of growing. And again, that's the internet showing us this in a way that we never would have seen before.
I truly believe that we all agree more than we disagree. I still believe that. I still believe in the power of positivity. I think that even the people that are right radicals on the one side or the other of situations, if we can just, some people are just lost causes. I'm not going to lie. Like, there's some people that are just not there, but there's the majority, and I would say that the vast majority of people, if we have a deeper understanding of what they see their life through, like, like I said, I may be completely on the other side of the political or religious spectrum from somebody, but, I have done this where I've reached out to a friend of mine that I, was from the Southern US that had a little bit of a different mentality than me, but I had to try to understand why he felt the way that he did, because we had so many conversations that we agreed on so many things. And I just sat there and said, well, what does it really come down to, Ryan? Like, I'm not even here to argue. I don't want to argue. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm just trying to understand. Can you just please let me know? And when he did, it really did drill down to the money and putting food on his plate was the end of the day. Like, it
often does.
And so I just said, okay, it might not be, I may completely disagree with the way that you think about it, but I do understand why you feel that way. Now we can move on and be cool. But now it just feels like there's just so many, like, every time you're on, especially on bloody social media, it's just like you throw one comment out and then somebody's just jabbing back at you and they don't really understand what the message you're trying to convey. So I don't know. Again, that's what I love about this industry now in particular, because I don't know. I felt that I didn't want to end up going to my grave being the guy that has on his gravestone he was a 25-year male exotic dancer. Like, I really wanted to actually give more than that from my opinion and my message. And there's a lot that was in my message in my book that entertains, and everybody that's read it so far, from what I understand, has liked it. So it's just getting it out there, right? And that's the thing, right? So I'm now going on a book tour. It starts this weekend, so I'm traveling.
Really?
Yeah. I'm actually doing my town here, Kelowna, here in British Columbia, and then on the Sunday I'm going to Penticton, which is about an hour away, and then each weekend throughout the summer I'm just basically going down to the coast and Vancouver and hitting all the, like, our Barnes and Noble is basically Chapters Indigo, so that's where I'm booked for all of them. So yeah, I'm just out there doing it, because the bottom line is that you can sit there and play like Jimi Hendrix in your freaking basement all day long, but unless you get that out there to the world, nobody even knows who the hell you are. So to me, I'm just in my own way. Maybe it's a little bit old school, but I'm just getting out there and doing some book signings.
This actually points towards something that was part of a conversation I had with an employee of the gardening business I run for Louise, who we just let go because he really wasn't doing the job. And I was asking myself why this guy was having so much trouble. And I finally concluded what I kind of had assumed all along, but I realized that my conclusion really was valid. He just didn't love the work. He didn't love it at all. He really disliked it. And I knew what he wanted to do. He was a college student. He was basically doing this as a summer job. And what I had asked him during the interview, what are you pursuing your college career in? And he wants to be in marketing. And so I knew that much about him. So on the day when I'm taking the tools back and firing the guy, I said to him, do you mind if I ask you a question? He says, yeah, all right. And he's kind of, he's pretty sullen and all that, but he's willing to hear what the question is. So I said, why do you love marketing? Why do you love the idea of doing a career in marketing? And he brightened up and he said, well, it's because I like the idea of being creative.
Yes.
And I said, okay, that I can understand that. So what have you done toward getting into the creative field, of getting into the marketing field? Have you tried to pursue that? Well, I was planning to do an internship next year. I said, do it this year.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
Jump.
And then I said to him, don't pursue the money, pursue the love.
Yeah, that's the truth.
I spent so many years pursuing the money. It was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. And now that I understand the difference, I want other people to know. So I actually took advantage of an opportunity to tell somebody who needed to hear, go after what you love. And the reason I say that is that's what you're doing. You're doing this book tour, following your love. Now, let's be honest, going into bookshops where this isn't like, Dan Brown releasing his latest novel and there are people lined up in the streets, right? You go into bookshop, nobody even knows who you are. There's probably nobody even waiting for you there. So it's kind of an ego tester to go do this kind of thing. You love what you're doing so much that you don't even care about that.
Oh yeah. And on top of that, I'm going to walk around in the bookstore in a G-string.
Are you really? No.
That would get some clients now. No, but
and we get attention anyway. Yeah,
we get some attention. But no, but for real, actually, like, all kidding aside, it is funny because I was just chatting with management with these stores and stuff, and they all said the same thing. You can sit there with your books at your table and wait for clients to come up to buy books, but a lot of those authors don't sell a damn thing. You've got to be bold enough to walk around and be like, oh, welcome in. How you doing today? What are you looking for? Memoir? I have a great memoir. Throw it right at them, because like it's a best-selling book for a reason. You can write the best book on the planet, but at the same time, it has to sell, and you got to get it out there. And even if it's incremental, and I'm doing that, I'm obviously out promoting my coaching program at the same time, because there's only so much money in books. But at the same time, it's like, it's all for the same purpose, Walt. And I'm going to say this, like, look, I mean, I'm not where I need to be financially yet. I'm not going to lie. Like, I go through my struggles just as much as many of us do. We're going through inflation out the yin yang right now. Gas and everything else is going crazy. Like, it's tough out there. But at the same time, like, this is where I bring in my morality and my integrity. I have vast sales experience. I was a former financial advisor. I've handled portfolios. Like, I mean, I've done all this stuff in the sales realm. And I have, like, I'm talking consulting for phone companies and all this. Like, my resume is a mile freaking long from my sales. But the thing is, I could go today and apply for the major corporation and get
Sure.
into a role, and I could take that job and probably be making enough to very, very comfortably live. On top of that, probably have all my medical and my dental benefits and all the
Yeah,
things that I want.
absolutely.
I
All the
could
perks.
probably go get it right now, right?
Mhm.
Like, but I continue the struggle. Why do I continue the struggle? Because I am actually going out and working a job right now. I've been doing it for the last few weeks. It's killing my body, but I'm doing it for more than one reason. Actually, I want to learn it a little bit from my own place, but I've been out landscaping like with a friend.
Okay.
And I know it's not pretty. It's not a career, but it's
Well,
money,
this is the company I run for my wife. It's a gardening business, so we're kind of in the same realm there.
right? But the thing is, I have the flexibility to go and do my book tour. I can take off whenever I want, any day. Like today, I had a podcast with you. I took it off because I just was like,
Yeah.
do it, right? Like,
And thank
I
you
don't
for that, by the way.
well, but I mean, what I'm saying is though, is that, but I woke up this morning with my back literally bent over, like I was feeling like I was going to be crippled. Okay. So like, that was what I'm saying. Like I'm
It's
putting
tough
myself
work.
through a lot of pain. I could go and not have that back pain, but I'm taking the pain because my mission for my business is just that important that I'm not going to go and commit to somebody else and give them the false hope that I'm going to be a salesperson for them for the next 5 years and I'm going to build a career with their company and tell them everything that they need to know to get a paycheck for the next few months and then screw them over. That's just not the type of person I am. I'm not going to do that to another person out there. I don't want to do that to a company. So I'm going to take the backbreaking labor and I'll continue to do it until these coaching clients that I have on board come to fruition next month. And if it takes me going out there every friggin' day and doing it, I will still do that because it keeps me, I guess you could say, like, I feel like I'm intact with my core values when I'm doing that, right? And it makes me feel good about what I'm doing. And it's a struggle, man. It's gonna, and I don't know what the end destination is. I could end up going out there and not selling a bloody book or having anybody freaking come to me for coaching, but I don't know until I try. Right. So you gotta get yourself out there. And this is just my one step in that direction. And so whatever it takes, I don't care. Start eating craft dinner every day if I've got to, but I don't.
Well, plus you're using a word without actually saying the word that is an old-fashioned word. It almost doesn't even get used today. But the word is integrity. Basically you're acting on what is integral to you as a person. That's where the word integrity comes from. What is integral to you? And what's integral to you is you have certain ways that you're willing to work with and behave with others, and others you are not willing to, and you stick to that. That's the integrity part of it.
Boundary.
Yeah.
No, and I'll tell you this, Walt. I mean, we've got about 10 minutes left, but I don't want to sit here and just sit there sound like I'm promoting all day long. But
well, it's okay. We do a lot of that here. It's fun.
There's a part of the book that is like one of my pillars in my book is on integrity, and it's because it's in fact one of the biggest transition points in my life that I wrote about in the book. And basically my book's it's not all about stripper stories and swinging things around and freaking dancing. It's actually a lot of,
that's how you get people to read the book.
Yeah, that's it. But it's actually more really about relationships. And for myself, like I had such a heavy disconnect emotionally. The relationships were really, really hard. But I did have a really deep connection with this one girl that she was in when I was in my early 20s, and we connected as I was a dancer, and she saw me as a dancer, and she was beautiful, and I went, "Oh, she's like a perfect girl," and all the stuff that came with the territory, right? And we had an on and off relationship for many, many years, but I was a component of her that she was just so unique, and I really like even just a touch of her hand, like it was like I could. It could be today, and she could be a million miles away. Like I could feel the touch of her hand. I know it was her. Like I was just that type of person, right?
Yeah.
So, and the crazy thing was, as years went by, and of course, I ended up in Florida, and her and I split, and she ended up in a situation where she became a dancer herself, and she became a big feature, and all this stuff happened. But years went by, and I was out on the road, and I was in Little Rock, Arkansas. The 2 times that I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, 2 great stories from there. But anyways, but one was that I happened to show up there, and I just met my now former ex-wife. I'd met her about a month before this incident happened, and I didn't say anything to my ex-wife about this until the book was written. So this is just like this year she heard this story. She never knew this. This was one of the big skeletons that came out of the closet. But what happened was we were me and Monica, my ex-wife, we were in our first month of our relationship. I was out on the road. She was back at my house in Florida, and she was all in love with the superstar, and she was so happy to be together with me. And well, I loved her. She was a great girl, but she had like, she was basically brought up in crap. Like she basically had a horrible life. She had tons of abuse, sexually, physically, mentally. She had a lot of problems, but I really loved that person. And so she was sitting back at my house, and I go on the road to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then who shows up, calls me out of the blue, but my ex that I was talking about, the touch of the hand. So she calls me up and she's like, I don't suppose you'd happen to be working in Little Rock, Arkansas tonight. And I was like, yes, I would be happening to. And she was like, oh, okay, I'm going to come down and see you. So she shows up at my show and she's just working down the street. And all of a sudden we're back connected again. And she's kind of wanting to form a relationship with me. And she literally like threw it out at me. And we went back to her hotel, and she calls her now ex, but at the time she was still together with this guy, and they had a kid together and everything. And she calls him up at the end of the call. She turned around and she was like, love you, and hung up. And I stood there in that second and thought to myself, my girlfriend, who loves me with everything inside of her, and we've only been together for a month, and we're fresh, and we're in that honeymoon stage and all the rest of that stuff, but she's authentically loves me for the person that I am, with no games, no bullshit, nothing. And this girl, who I have this major passion for, and there's a lot of lust there, she just hung up the phone and said, I love you, to her partner, while she's wanting to get with me in her hotel room right now.
Right.
So there was the integrity.
Very stark at that point.
Very. And so many years, my friend, I sat there and thought, did I make the right move? Because I ended up staying with my ex-wife, and me and this other girl, we did sleep together that night, but we did not have sex. We actually stayed in the same hotel room and everything. We slept together, but we didn't do anything. And I gave her a kiss the next morning and said bye, and that was it. And I moved on and went the integrity route. And that integrity route gave me so much pain financially and so many struggles. And I ended up in a divorce that I ended up on an 8-year Forrest Gump walk afterwards and everything else. And all those years went by. And I always wondered, what would it have been like if I took the other road? I would have been completely financially set, right? And I thought to myself, did I make the wrong move? And here's the irony of that. One of my biggest fans when I wrote my book was the ex that actually, with the touch of the hand, she still is one of my biggest fans. I love her to death. She's a great person. She's married, got a couple kids, the whole nine down there in Seattle area. My point behind it is that when she read the book, she actually said to me, I want to let you know something. And I was like, what's that? She said, you made the right decision when it came to that butterfly moment. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah. She goes, although you might have thought that it was going to be a better road, I was really messed up at that time, and we probably wouldn't have ended up making it. So she was like, you took the right road. And it's interesting because those feelings and all those emotions and those thoughts, they were in the back of my head like luggage for so long.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But now that that's cleared, it's like, it's just weird how it just another layer dropped right off, right? And that's why I called my book Take It Off, because it really actually is all about taking those layers off, whether it's taking them off to really find your true self based off your core values and really addressing those things that you might not have addressed before, or just try to kind of going back into time and going, hey, this happened and I still feel pain about it. Because I have had, honestly, Walt, I've had situations where I've been doing the most mundane shit, sitting outside shoveling snow in December at my place here, and I'm doing something that I'm not thinking, or in the shower or whatever, just something you're just kind of in that zone. And then I think about some time when I got bullied when I was in my teens, and I get that gut feeling, and it's just like that overwhelming negative energy, and it's hitting and I'm hitting on that arc of intense energy, and the gut's killing me, and I'm going literally back in time and bringing these negative memories back into my head. So and it's now that awareness that I have, I'm like, oh, why are you doing this to yourself? That was like 20 years ago. Like, why are you even thinking about these thoughts right now? Or why are you being triggered like this? And usually I can go into something that I have in the present day, in the now, and determine that there is something else that's happening right now that's making me think of these unworthy thoughts. It's making me think that I'm undeserving maybe of success because I was told that I was shit by some guy when I was young and he pounded the hell out of me in high school or something. So I still kind of believe that because it's so embedded, right? And so it's just that awareness now. It's like, it's always going to be there. Like, I can't change it. You can't erase the memory. But at the same time, when you're aware of why it's popping up, then you can kind of make that shift and take that reset, and I take that step back and go walk in nature for a little while and figure it out. Right. So,
well, you also got a great gift out of that too. That story, you had an experience that most people don't get. You got to see what the other path was going to be like. I mean, you didn't actually see the whole path, but you found out what the result was. And it wasn't what your imagination said it was. It was actually, you made the right choice and you didn't realize it at the time. We don't often get that kind of feedback, but you got it. That's something really worth celebrating. That's really something.
Oh, shit, that's the beauty of writing a memoir, man. Like, you know, as much as I wanted to hide under the covers when that thing got released, I was sitting there just going, oh my God, the world now knows everything. But man, you know, when you get that response and it's just, to me, but then again, on the other side of it, if you don't get the response from the people that are really close to you, that you want the support from, family members or whatever it is, you got to be able to discipline your disappointment too, and realize that maybe they just, you know, they have their own reasonings for not supporting you, right? You can't, because though they normalize you or whatever it might be, right? So now when I see the perfect stranger out there and I'm telling them about what I do, they're like, oh, tell me more. Talk to my family about it. They're just like, whatever, Corey, go get a job.
Well, I think what we're really talking about here is learning the process of growth itself. We've been talking about growth, but now we're in learning the process of growth. And when you learn the process of growth, well, this is one of the best things I learned from David Strickle, who is he's like Esther Hicks. Esther Hicks channels Abraham. He channels the stream of David. And I actually learned this from the stream of David, from the Abraham side, so to speak. But their basic teaching in this particular instance was try to look at things from source perspective. Don't look at things from the human perspective. Take a step way back and kind of look at it from the way source energy would look at it and try to understand from that viewpoint. And it's a very powerful exercise because what ends up happening when you do that exercise is you realize how these problems, these situations, these old tapes that play in our heads, these things that traumatize us, when you take a step far enough back, you realize they aren't all that big. They felt big, they seemed big, they appeared big, but they really weren't all that big. It's like the difference between being in a car accident and seeing a car accident from a mile away. Like, oh, 2 cars hit. Whereas, oh my God, it's 2 entirely different experiences.
Bang on. Like, and I know I talked about this before, but I won't go into it forever. But I'm just saying, like, when I went to the Philippines a couple of years ago and I jumped into Kawasan Falls, I mean, 15-meter jump into a waterfall, I would never have done that 10 years ago. No way. Like, I would have just been like, forget about it. But again, it came down to that clarity and what you're talking about of the little things that you make so much bigger. And I've said this about my experience on the Ferris wheel as a kid and getting thrown on there by my aunt and my uncle, and, you know, them taking me to the fair and leaving me stranded at the top of this thing, crying my freaking eyes out and losing it and being so scared of heights. And then realizing 20 years later, I wasn't at the fair at all. She was just plugged a quarter in at the mall and I was like 7 feet tall. Right? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's so much bigger than what it is because I'm just a little person at that time, right? But when you're older and then you go back to your elementary school and you see those little desks and you see those little hallways and all that stuff, you realize that the perspective that you had from that age was so overblown on so many things. And I always kind of come to that because it's really, it did make a difference for me because, like, when I think now, like, about, you know, what where I'm my fears right now, like what I'm maybe scared of as far as, you know, the inner critic saying maybe you're over your head or whatever it is, and all those things that keeps hitting you all the time. I got to realize that I have growth to do still, and I got to go and jump. I got to expand it. I got to get out of that comfort zone because that fear is not serving me in any way, and all those memories, whether it be bullying or all that shit, is not serving me in any way. And it's my obligation, not only to myself but the people that are around me, to make sure that I become the best version of myself and I'm not projecting off negative energy unto them, because that's what I've done before in my past as well. You know, like just having a shitty sales week or something and slamming my desk with my headset, freaking out, blaming everybody else for my problems but me, you know. So I don't know. Anyway, I can go on for days on this subject. Jeez.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, in the like last show, it was all about the laughs because, well, first of all, you were telling us all these really wild stories and somewhat raunchy stories too. First time, it was getting to know who you were and all that. This time, we're getting to know more about your practice and what you're doing with your clientele and what you're doing with yourself. And so this has been just like another different but wonderful experience.
Wow.
So
Dude,
thank you for joining us.
Every time we've done this, I'm like, as soon as we get done, I'm like over to your calendar and I'm like,
Can we do it again?
I'm serious. You and Debbie, you guys both have great podcasts, and I actually I truly enjoy jumping on with you guys. I feel like I'm literally sitting there in space with you. So no, it's great, man. Like all the way around. And I enjoy doing podcasts in general, but each one, has a little bit different, but we just have such a casual vibe that I just truly enjoy every minute of it. So I took the day off. Screw it.
Yeah, I love it. This is great. Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to the next time you're going to be on the show. It's going to be a great thing. I'm really sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, man. And, I'll throw my little pitch in there as well. Takeitoff.ca. Go get my book. It's actually the great thing is that overpriced bloody paperback. You don't have to pay all that money for it anymore. You can get a Kindle version.
Get a Kindle. Yeah, there you go.
At least you don't have to spend the money on the bloody thing. But yeah, just the price of shipping and freaking printing and everything right now is so ridiculous. And if you're trying to send from Canada to the US, oh God.
Yeah. You don't need that. Don't need
that.
No. Well, thank you very much. This has been great. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. Thank you to the live streamers as well. We'll see you all next time here at LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.